Hello and welcome to our Reboot review. I'm Paul.
And I'm Dave.
And this week we are discussing the episode of Reboot entitled Painted Windows. This episode originally aired November 2nd, 1995 in Canada and November 4th, 1995 in the US, so they caught up for some reason all of a sudden.
And again, with the most chaotic episode.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting choice here. So, Dave, number one film at the box office this week.
Hmm. Around that time.
Going into the winter of 95.
And already passed with those things from there. With those last couple. What would have been the biggie? There's
It's
nothing that immediately comes to mind.
I'll give you a hint. It's a comedy, and it had, especially for the time, like a pretty great cast. But I don't know if you've ever seen it. This is one of those ones where I'm like, Dave might not have seen that one.
Oh yeah, with those. Because a couple of them have kind of popped into my head, though time range may be a little bit bad. That, and I can't even remember the titles of any of them. But just kind of the case of boy meets girl, haha, funny situations and relationship stuff.
No, it's not a romantic comedy. It's just a straight comedy.
Hmm.
It's based on a novel.
Ooh. Makes me mildly sad that I'm not that much of a book person. Shoot.
Well, I don't think you're going to get this one, Dave. So it's a movie called Get Shorty.
Very much so, because it rings a bell. That one little tiny bell, but yeah, I have no idea for that particular film.
Oh, it's okay. Let me just go over the cast quickly because this had a hell of a cast in '95. So John Travolta, Gene Hackman, Rene Russo, James Gandolfini, and Danny DeVito.
Okay, because again, all those names, again, obvious and some familiar and whatnot for that. And on the one hand, I thought John Travolta was in something with Danny DeVito. It's like, no, the possibility's there, but I have not seen that movie.
I
Something I
highly
might have to go hunting for.
I highly recommend seeing it. Um, from memory, maybe steer clear of the sequel. I remember it not being very good though.
Duly noted, though I'm not supposedly surprised. Well, surprised, but also not surprised that they've supposedly made a sequel, especially with how it's sounding.
Yeah. Anyway, let us move on to some video games.
Ooh, what kind of video game?
So, last time we left off, we were in September. So, we've missed a few things. So, I'm going to quickly go over a few things that we've missed that are like, important ish
Hmm.
in October. It's not really like a ton for October. October 15th, if you're a PC gamer, you could pick up a little game called Hexen. I don't know if you're familiar with Hexen.
Like the title is there, but it's being either mixed with something else entirely different, or that I don't even know. It's just not quite ringing that bell. Hmm.
It was one of those id Software games that came out. Like it's
Mm.
from memory, it's fine, but it's nothing like that you need to go out and play. The other big one for October, actually, well, there's two more big ones for October. Point and click game for PC and Mac called I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream.
Oh, yes. Though it's a case of, haha, never touched that game, but oh boy, did I hear about it. Oh
Yes.
dear boy, did I.
And the other big October release was TIE Fighter.
Like, again, not surprised, but nothing that I've supposedly touched.
Yeah, that doesn't entirely surprise me. So for November, Oh, also, the original Time Crisis came out sometime in October in the arcades, but I don't have an exact release date.
Oh, but nevertheless, neat.
So, November 5th, the day after this episode would go to air in the US, you could go pick up this little game on the PlayStation 1 called Twisted Metal.
Ah, very much yes. Like
You've
it was
played.
one of those cases that it was just like we have racers, and then got the battle sort of styling sort of thing together and the crazy story to it. And it's like, well, let's throw this out into the world. And it's like, holy cow,
You've played some of the Twisted Metal games, right?
I have.
Okay. I was gonna be like, there's no way you haven't at least tried some of them. Alright, moving on to number one song in America, Dave.
Mm. And music wise,
November 95. This is another one where I'm like, you're definitely familiar with the artist, maybe not the song.
yeah, it's not too surprising though. It's kind of the case of unless I know the song, there's slow chance that I probably know the artist that well.
Oh no, Dave, I'm gonna say you are definitely familiar with this artist. Because you have ears and Christmas exists.
Oh dear, we're not touching that particular thing, are we?
Well, the number one song in America this week is Fantasy by Mariah Carey.
Okay, it's that one, but it's not that one. The one that we really need to be concerned about.
I don't know what you're referring to.
Yeah, it's probably best that we don't open that Pandora's box.
Alright, let us move on to the episode.
Yes, we
So,
must check out all the marvelous fine art that is created.
Hexadecimal accesses the system's paint program. Which, that sentence fragment makes me happy. And Mainframe becomes her canvas, which she soon begins to wreak havoc, causing a communications blackout and melting all forms of transport and glitch. Okay. I want more episodes with Hex in them.
Understandable, because this one pretty much rocks.
Like, she's just such a good villain.
Interesting fun of the words. I could completely understand why, but I'll be curious to kind of ask a little bit more detail of why you think that.
Well, because, like, okay, so this scheme, there's really. Is there any purpose to her doing this? Did I miss
Quite
something?
honestly, no. It's just kind of the case of opening up to the story, head down to the important archive section of the principal office, couple guards sitting outside the door. Oh man, how's this day of us just guarding this particular sort of stuff? Hexadecimal shows up. It's like, oh,
Yeah, it seems like she doesn't really gain anything from doing this. She's just doing it because she thinks it's funny.
that, and she had such artistic talent and wanted to show it all to Mainframe.
I just. She's such a good villain. Why isn't she the main villain and, like, Megabyte is one of her, like, underlings? Like,
A very good question that we could possibly dive into for the specifics of the enemies sort of trope for things, but I think as it sits, Megabyte as it sits would never in any of his particular sort of things want to be an underling. He's the one that needs to come up with the schemes and plans.
it's true. I mean, you're not wrong, but I just want more Hex because Hex is so much fun. She's just
Heck,
wacky and insane, and I just love watching her on screen. Like, she's just so much fun.
yes, it was marvelous and horribly chaotic, but nevertheless marvelous.
Yes. I like. There's not a lot to say about this episode because it's just kind of Hex being weird and doing all this like paint stuff. It really doesn't have much of a plot.
Very true. The only other thing you could really dive into is just how much art inspiration they decided to go with within this episode, touching all the traditional things that even little kids would probably have an idea. Oh, right, that's that big famous art piece that so shown on just about every single television show or other sorts of thing to represent fancy art.
Yeah, there's the Thinker, there's the creation of Adam, there's the Scream. There's probably a whole bunch more that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head.
Most likely an entire web page filled with them.
Probably. But yeah, I do enjoy this.
So I think one particular question is, as the episode goes along, Hexa's doing her art, taking a couple particular people out, but as it sits, the main characters within the story facing off against her are traditionally Bob and Dot and Enzo, adding in Brisket as well as Mike the TV. How are your feelings with that kind of team up with everyone?
I adore Mike the TV in this episode.
Okay.
I love Mike because he's just trying to suck up to Hex.
Well, not even wanting to be part of the situation, but have something to work for his particular thing of being a television. Time to show off all the particular art and stuff that's happening. Hopefully, not get caught up with it, but hell, it's going to make one heck of a show.
I love that. He's just like, you can tell part of it's like, well, I can put this on and it'll be good television, and Hex probably won't get mad at me then.
Mm.
And I love that. I love that character. Yeah, no, I quite enjoyed this episode for what it is.
So, out of curiosity, with the couple effects and other sorts of things that Hex messes with or does to particular people, especially does to particular sort of people, what were your thoughts with what happens to the three guards she kidnaps, as well as what happens to Enzo within this episode?
Oh, and so it gets split into like all the vid screens. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's like I don't understand how that works, but
Kind
it,
of an interesting sort of thing of Enzo doing his traditional thing, trying to help, getting in trouble, but that affecting the adventure and enabling to assist in some sort of way.
well, I also don't understand how he gets like split up like that. Like that doesn't make sense to me. Because I'm like, he's like a 3D person, and all of a sudden he becomes like a bunch of 2D vid screens, and I don't understand the how that happens.
Yeah, I suppose. The only one thing I usually piece it by is Hex is kind of taking control of all of mainframe, making it her canvas. It's not surprising that if you throw yourself into a window, you'll throw yourself into the window.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Like, yeah, no, I like Hex's crazy schemes and her taking control of mainframe like that and fucking with people. It's funny.
Okay, but as it kind of sits as a more traditional sort of plan in comparison to what Megabyte has been doing over the last couple of episodes, would you say that her villainy is better than what he's kind of been doing? Or that as it kind of sits, it's just Hex deciding to step out for the day and oh shit, everyone needs to lock the doors?
I think Hex is a better villain for a kids show
Okay.
because her villainy, it's like I guess she could be kind of scary, but it's mostly stuff that like it's mostly just kind of wacky evil.
Okay. You know, with the case of Fong in the episode, races his head, sticks an apple instead.
Yeah, like it kind of I think Hex fits better with the tone of the show than Megabyte usually does.
Okay. So I suppose the last question with this particular episode is what happens at the end?
I don't remember.
Well, it's a marvelous case of the whole scheme of the plan is Hexadecimal took a file from the principal office and created a link so she could go back home, mess with the pink program, mess with the whole system.
Right.
So the two teams of Bob, Mike the TV, and Dot and Enzo needed to sever the link, but make sure that everything was completely fixed without leaving all the art craziness left over. That managed to be all right if Bob never bothered to take off Hexadecimal's mask.
Right, and then the mask comes off, and we get the whole like light thing shooting out of her face.
Yeah, the marvelous reason why she's so powerful is what's behind the mask, and without the mask to restrain it, yeah, it could have caused one hell of a problem. But of course, never with everything fixed, Glitch is also fixed, so the Deus Ex Machina of able to fix up the problem is all good, though it kind of leaves Hexadecimal in a bit of a state.
Yeah, I don't. You make a fair point. I don't really know what exactly we're supposed to take from the end of the episode, but like I said, I just want more Hex because I enjoy Hex.
Very much so. Hexadecimal is very much a fun character. Though, I suppose one last comment. Out of all the things that Bob could have done to supposedly help out Hexadecimal at the end of the episode, it probably would have been best to not leave Mike the TV with her.
I mean, she is a villain and she does need to be punished.
So
But
very true, but the last thing, like, in comparison from your past experiences with Mike the TV, it seems a little bit much with being left alone with Mike the TV.
I mean, we don't know for how long.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
Although 5 minutes could feel like 5 days.
Mm.
Yeah, that does seem a bit like the Geneva Convention's gonna have a problem with it.
And
Yeah.
so I suppose the question, well, I suppose one's already answered. If it comes to future episodes, you'll be very happy if Hexadecimal still has a place or part to play within future episodes.
I want more Hex. She's legitimately become one of my favorite characters in the series. Every time she shows up, I'm like, yay, Hex.
Radios, radios. I think that's about as much as I got for thoughts on the rest of the episode. It's always fun. It's always a case of, despite the fact that this these TV series were most likely rerun for a decent amount of time from when they premiere or show certain episodes, it was always nice to remember watching this episode a multitude of times with just how crazy, insane, and marvelously chaotic this episode is with all the stuff it has within it.
Yeah, this
Oh,
was good.
and the one last point is we never must forget the one very important line from this episode. I ate exercise.
That's the worst pun. Because he's an 8.
He is.
Ah. Alrighty. So, next time we will be discussing. Oh, dear God, I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce this episode. Andrea. Because it's got
It's a
AI in it.
simple word, but when we came to this episode, oh, it is a case that they did capitalize those two particular letters within this episode.
They did, which makes it
Mhm.
tricky to say. So, next time we will discuss that episode because it's certainly a thing.
Yes, very much so.
So, until then, I'm Paul.
And I'm Dave.